I think sometimes, like, how much do kids naturally do and how much do we see in movies? Because, I was raised with my mom who, herself grew up in the 70s showing me, the John Hughes movies that she liked as a teenager and all kinds of things, Sandlot and stuff like that. So I'm wondering, like, do we just watch kids prank or bully other kids and repeat that behavior? Or, does, like, many people inventing the light bulb in the same year, does it just arise that kids think butts are funny and, pulling down someone's pants is going to be a good prank even when we're 13?
Hi, and welcome to 5 Random Questions, the show with unexpected questions and unfiltered answers. I'm your host, Danny Brown, and each week I'll be asking my guests 5 questions created by a random question generator. The guest has no idea what the questions are, and neither do I, which means this could go either way. So sit back, relax, and let's dive into this week's episode. Today's guest is Amanda McLoughlin. Amanda is the CEO of Multitude, a podcast collective, production company, and ad sales provider. A digital creator since 2004, whose career started in finance and business services, she created Multitude in 2018 to support fellow creators in making a living on their own terms. She was named a Forbes 30 Under 30 Media honoree in 2021 and currently co-hosts 3 podcasts, Spirits, Join the Party, and Attach Your Résumé, and executive produces several more. She also teaches podcasting at Stony Brook University. So Amanda, welcome to 5 Random Questions.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you having me.
I appreciate you being here. And I mentioned there in the intro and going through your bio, you're a podcast teacher at Stony Brook University, which is awesome to hear, because do you feel that podcasting as a medium now is getting more recognition in educational faculties with, students and teachers, etc.?
It is. Our specific program is within the film school at Stony Brook University, which is a state school in the great state of New York, meaning that it is way more financially accessible for students of low and middle income. Our program is 7 years old, and last year was actually our record enrollment. So we're seeing more and more people want podcasting experience, whether that's because they watch podcasts or listen to them on their own time and they think it's interesting, or because they are studying something like film communications journalism and know that a multimedia, digital media career is the way the world is moving. So I'm seeing more and more job postings for adjuncts and full-time professors within podcasting, which I love to see.
Well, that's awesome. I know, my ex-colleague, an older marketing agency, also did marketing teaching at the university there, influence marketing. So it was great to see that kind of medium come to the fore. But being podcasters and creators, you're always wanting to see more of our medium come forward. So that's great to hear. And one quick question before we actually move into the random questions for this episode. In a recent episode of the Join the Party podcast, you talked about, you and the co-host talked about grappling hooks and creating a grappling hook, which sounded fun. So who, in your mind, if you had to pick which superhero had the best grappling hook, which one would it be and why that hook in particular?
Excellent question. I would have to say that I think Poison Ivy from the Batman universe would have the best grappling hook. I'm a huge gardener. I'm covered in flower tattoos, and I find it so moving and beautiful and also tenacious how, like, vining plants like cucumbers and beans, they have these little tendrils that reach out and wrap onto a trellis or a stake. And trust me, if they wrap onto something you don't want them on, there is no getting them off. So my version of Poison Ivy's grappling hook would probably involve some of those little curly cues that would, like, stick into the rock or your skin and not let go.
That would be awesome. It's almost like the cordyceps on the Last of Us, like game
exactly
TV,
right,
etc. But yeah, that's a great one. And I know, we've tried to grow vegetables in our backyard, and none of us are green fingers. So I'm very jealous that you can actually do that and get them growing to the point where they've got tentacles coming out of you.
The UK is great for a lot of things, including raising grass to raise livestock. Vegetables are a little more challenging, so give yourself some credit.
Yeah, well, that is true. That is true. So, Amanda, are you ready for this episode's 5 random questions?
Let's go.
Awesome. Perfect. Let's just bring up the random question generator and we will head off into the hot seat. Okay, so I feel this is a nice, interesting one to start off with, and it kind of ties into a question on the customer side that we had on a previous guest on a previous episode. So Amanda, question number 1. If you were a waiter and had a rude customer, what would you do?
The truthful answer is I would be at work and probably unable to do what I would want to do. something that I would want to say, hey, remember, I am serving you a meal here. I am handling your food. I'm a professional. Treat me as a professional. I'm at work. So I probably couldn't say that if I wanted to salvage my tip or keep my job. Instead, I would say if I were a customer witnessing this interaction with another customer, I would turn to the person, as I've done several times in my life, particularly on the holiday season. People get really rude at the post office. And I would say, hey, she's at work. Be nice, please. So that is probably how I would handle it as a fellow patron.
Right. And I know, like, you mentioned you're in New York, and New York has a very stereotypical, there's no BS with New Yorkers.
Yes.
You will say what you say. But you mentioned there that if you're in a professional setting, it's your job, it's your work. You couldn't kind of go with that same approach. Do you feel that's like, that's true of most service industries? I mean, because obviously, like you say, you'd want to support and help out the waiter or waitress. But do you think that's something that should be encouraged, or that if you get a really rude customer, because the customer's not always right, as we know?
I think the customer is not always right. And I think in a perfect setting, you would have a manager that looked out for you and said, hey, if somebody crosses your boundary, if they treat you badly, if they disrespect the staff, then the customer can go. But I sort of made an assumption where, like, certainly at the hourly jobs and customer facing jobs I've had in the past, often the management's approach is, well, we can replace an employee, but we can't replace a customer, which I do think is totally backward, because employees who understand what's going on, add value to the workplace, and keep the thing running. The manager is not out there serving the food and, rolling the coins or whatever else they're doing, folding the t-shirts at the Zara. I think that it's on the manager and the management to make sure that the workers have that support and that safety. But yeah, I often find, especially in New York, that in the lack of structural support, community support comes through instead. And so I have been witness to many a time where somebody, whether it's someone falling down in public or not being supported in their workplace or being harassed by somebody else, random strangers will step in and say, we don't do this here.
It reminds me a bit of, I don't know the TV show, it might have been something like Suits or something, probably not. But there's a TV show where there's a clip on, there was like two people were sitting down, two ladies were sitting down having lunch or something. And two men were across the table doing a business lunch or something like that. And one of the guys was super, super rude to the waitress because she'd supposedly messed up a simple dish. Not her fault, because she's not the chef, right? But he laid out on her being the typical...
It really tells you that person has never worked in the service industry. Like, you can really tell.
Exactly. So the lady, one of the ladies, she was dressed as a nurse. That's probably her job. This is how much I know about the show. My bad. But she stood up and went over and pretended to be the manager, defended the waitress and told the guy to apologize, and asked the person he was chatting with, do you really want to give your money to this guy here as a client or as a contractor, whatever that looks like? And I feel that's something you would definitely do. You'd be that nurse or that person that's having the conversation and then just walks over to that one.
Thank you. I try to use my social privilege as a, coming up on middle-aged white woman for good.
Awesome. Well, I feel that was a nice, easy-ish one to get us into the flow of the questions. So let's have a look at question number 2. Okay. Question number 2, Amanda. What is the funniest joke that you know?
Okay, I think I'm a pretty funny person, but not in joke format. So whenever I am backed into a corner and need to tell a joke, which happens occasionally, the one I go for is, what's brown and sticky?
What's brown and sticky? Okay, I'm going to say a stick probably.
It's a stick. It is. But sometimes people think poop. They might think a certain dessert. They might think a brownie. But at least it gets a little bit of a chuckle.
Yeah, no, my kids would definitely go for, maybe not so much now, they're a little bit older, one's 15, one's 13, so they're kind of over the immature joke thing. Oh, it's poo, it's a poo. But yeah, I hear, I'm not, I'd like to think I've got a good sense of humor when I'm watching something, but I don't think I may have I couldn't just pull a joke out of the hat and, go with that.
I think one great thing about podcasting is for most of us, it's not a solo sport. And so I get to hang out with people who are hilarious, who are experts, who know things that I don't know, and really play off of them, which I spent, the better part of 10 years doing in audio. So that is my excuse for why I don't have a better joke than one I learned on YouTube in just about 2007.
Yeah, but that's it. As you mentioned, obviously this is like a solo host show. Obviously you're a guest on the show. I do have other podcasts, much like yourself actually, where it's co-hosted and it's nice to bounce off people as well, right? And actually you might not bring the humour necessarily, but you bring something and another person brings the humour and another co-host brings X, Y, Z, which always helps if, from a podcasting point of view for sure.
Absolutely.
So you're in New York. They've got some great comedy clubs there. I've been to a couple when I've been at podcasting events, for example. What's your favourite comedy club? Do you go to comedy clubs at all? And if so, what's your favourite club and comedian that you may have seen then?
I don't often go to comedy clubs, but I am trying to change that. My great friend Max Gross is a comedian here in New York and does a lot of open mics and events. I've been to a few comedy podcast shows actually at the Bell House, a pretty famous venue here in the city. So most of the time when I'm seeing comedy, it is in the shape of a podcast, such as Comedy Bang Bang or other shows like that. So I highly recommend following my friend Max at Max Got Jokes on Instagram.
It's interesting to see that there's more podcasting, especially with live podcasting now, whether it's, live streaming on YouTube, because we don't really draw the lines between audio and video podcasting, or just live streaming, like audio live streaming. But it's interesting to see how many creatives now have moved to the podcasting space to share their art. So comedians, as you mentioned, you can now live stream live shows and really grow an audience, whereas previously it may have been more word of mouth because it's more a physical kind of thing when going to a comedy show, but now you can do the whole, I can stream it on audio or video.
Well, Comedians Doing Podcasts was one of the very early developments of mainstream podcasting in the early 2010s. As you know, because comedians are great on microphone, they're trained to be fun conversationalists, they know each other, and a lot of the time they had access, especially in big cities like New York, Chicago, and LA here in the US, to a quiet place to record. And so lots and lots of podcasts that we all know of who started the Earwolf Network, what is now HeadGum, places like that, were literally done just before the, La Brea Improv opened or whatever. So for me, I will always think fondly of comedians, including Mark Maron, I think, as one of the standout examples of folks who brought their skill set to podcasting in a way that they could crank out an hour-long interview podcast or sketch podcast that is not the same amount of work that goes into an hour-long special, which you are certainly not getting every week.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Exactly. And I, kudos to anybody that can do stand-up and go in front of a whole bunch of people and hold retention and be funny for 20, 30 minutes, an hour, whatever long the stand-up special is. It always makes me wonder that you're teaching podcasting to your students. It always makes me wonder if there's an opportunity as whether a side hustle or part of their gig, etc., for comedians to teach podcasters mic technique, audience technique, how to tell a story, how to, hold silence, etc., which I feel sometimes it gets missed out on podcasters because we don't always have these people that can teach us. We're just trying to fluff through, watch YouTube videos and see how it's done.
I certainly know of some podcasters who have done that. Adil Rafai is a great comedian and podcaster on shows like Hello from the Magic Tavern, Hey Riddle Riddle, and Multitude's Own, Tell Me About It. And I know he's done some basically like corporate comedy gigs and corporate podcasting gigs. I think it's so worthwhile when you are a comedian, you are playing to an audience, right? Like so many forms of live performance, almost all of them, in fact, require hearing feedback from your audience. We don't get that in podcasting. It is not in time. It's not live. And so by the time we record something, edit it, talk to a collaborator and put it out there, much of the time we're not knowing how folks react until much later. So something that I have found really useful in podcasting is to think about my audience as I'm making the show. Think about how does somebody who is new to this understand what I'm doing if they're listening to, for example, episode 445 of Spirits, a show that's been around for almost 10 years. People are going to be listening to it who are brand new to the show. This will be their first example of who I am and what my work is. And even though I've known my co-host Julia for 30 years and we've been doing the podcast for 10 of those years, doesn't mean that the person, will understand all of our jokes. So I guess it's a long way of saying that I think comedians really can help teach us to consider the audience's reaction, not to necessarily cater to it, but to consider it. And to remember that even if you and I are recording one-on-one, eventually somebody is going to be listening. So you need to make room for them, cheat out to the audience a little bit and move one shoulder backstage, so they can see what's going on a little bit better.
I love that. I heard a bit of advice and I can't remember who mentioned it, that said you should always no matter how long you've been doing your podcast, and you mentioned right there, Amanda, you've been doing one of your podcasts for 10 years, but people can jump in at any time. New listeners can follow at any time, and they might not know what the podcast is about. So it's always good to always have that reminder at the very start. Hey, you're listening to XYZ, we do this. Glad to have you here. Whatever that looks like, whatever your message looks like.
Just
but
like
it's
you
always
did a
good.
few minutes ago.
Yeah, exactly. So it's key, I feel. So that's great advice. I love that. And you can tell your teaching coming through there as well. I felt like we got a lot of insights. Look to your teacher approach
Thank
there,
you.
which is awesome. That is great. I love that. So let's have a look then. Moving swiftly along, let's have a look at question number 3. So question number 3, what is the most embarrassing thing that's happened to you?
Oh, that's a great question. Let me cast my mind back over my most horrific memories. There were absolutely moments. Oh, you know what? I got pantsed in middle school. That was terrible. We were all walking from the locker room out to the track to do, I think, our mile run. Do you have this in the UK where they make students pass like a mile-long run in a certain amount of minutes in order to, like, I don't know, pass gym?
I don't think so. I'm in Canada now, so I've been here, but I grew up in the UK, obviously. And when I was at school in the UK, I don't think we had that. We had some horrendous things that we had to do at gym, but I don't think we had that, thankfully.
That was terrible. It was the day I dreaded the most in schooling, and somebody pantsed me, and my whole bottom was on display. So I did not like that very much. And thinking back, that probably is the single most embarrassed I've ever been in a given moment.
I wonder why that's. I mean, obviously, I know why it's embarrassing as a kid, obviously, but I wonder why that's something that kids think of doing to embarrass. You know, I mean, okay, you're pulling pants down, but there's a lot worse, I feel, that could be done. You know, that could really embarrass you. You know what kids are like. We're evil, right? As kids, I know I was like a little jerk when I was a kid at school.
I think sometimes, like, how much do kids naturally do and how much do we see in movies? Because, you know, I was raised with my mom who, you know, herself grew up in the 70s, showing me, you know, the John Hughes movies that she liked as a teenager and all kinds of things, Sandlot and stuff like that. So I'm wondering, like, do we just watch kids prank or bully other kids and repeat that behavior? Or, you know, does, like, many people inventing the light bulb in the same year, you know, does it just arise that kids think butts are funny and, you know, pulling down someone's pants is going to be a good prank even when we're 13?
Yeah, no, that's true. I love that you mentioned The Sandlot. I'd never seen that movie or heard of it until my wife mentioned it. She's Canadian, and she mentioned that was like almost like a rite of passage for Canadians is watching a Sandlot movie, you know, when you're a kid. So we showed it to our kids when they were much younger, and they loved it. They loved all 3, actually. I think there was a 4th one either planned or released, but 1, 2, and 3 I thought were really good, you know, good kid movies to watch as a family as well.
That's great. I think one that we watched was the Gremlins. You ever screen that for the kids?
We did, yeah. We watched that because we'd been talking about it for a while, and I think we eventually watched it one Halloween round about when they were 10 or 8 or something like that. So son would have been 10, daughter would have been 8.
Good. That one genuinely freaked my mom out as an adult as well as a kid. So that's the one we never watched. And by the time I finally saw it in college, I think it had lost a little bit of the shine.
Yeah, well, it is one of these. I mean, it's like you say, it's a really entertaining movie. So I think if you're watching Gremlins as a kid, either when it first came out or very close to when you were a kid, you know, it might be years later. I think that's when it would capture it. It's one of these movies maybe that hasn't quite, not aged badly, but from a scary point of view, it hasn't.
Makes sense to me.
Yeah, so I like that. I like the Gremlins. Yeah, that's a movie that I did enjoy watching. But yeah, it's a great point. I mean, before I moved to Canada, my growing up, if you like, is watching movies as a teen in the UK. A lot of John Hughes movies because that was, you know, I was the perfect age for these movies when they came out. So like 16 Candles, Some Kind of Wonderful, all these amazing movies.
Oh yeah.
So you get a sort of feeling what America is like through John Hughes. But then you go and it's a little bit different, which is not disappointing. It's just different, you know. But it's how do you feel as an American? Do you think he captured the teen youth properly? Not properly. That's a bad description. Sorry, John.
I think that it was a version of American teenagedom that all of us hoped for and very few of us achieved. I feel similarly about Buffy, which obviously it's about vampires and supernatural creatures. So leaving that aside, even the idea of going to high school in California where there's like a campus and you walk between different buildings during the school day blew my mind as someone growing up in snowy and cold New York. So I think the sort of like Hollywood, California version of that, or even the, idealized upper middle class American Chicago that was in something like Home Alone, definitely spoke to me. And that's an ideal. It's something that, you'll occasionally feel, or I'll occasionally feel like, wow, this is like a house like from a Martha Stewart catalog or a John Hughes movie. But the vast majority of us, the answer is money. And so I don't think that is what most of us are looking at. But man, if I could have any of the cars that folks are driving in John Hughes movies, I'd be pretty happy.
Oh, yeah. Well, you think of, what's Ferris Bueller's Day Off, a John Hughes movie?
I think it was.
I think it was, yeah. I'm going to show my ignorance there. I apologize, John, if that's not, but I'm pretty sure that was a John Hughes movie.
I love that you're addressing John as if he's listening.
I know, right? Because we know he's listening.
And yes, you're right. It was, directed and written by John Hughes.
Perfect. Awesome. So yeah, I mean, the sports car, the red Corvette that, obviously had that horrible end at the end of the movie. Spoiler alert, but if you've not watched it by now, you're never going to watch it. I'm sorry.
Don't feel too bad. It's a very expensive car. They'll be fine.
Exactly. But you made a good point about the house in Home Alone, because I always wondered what the parents did for a living to have this massive mansion. But you never hear them talk about what work they do. Or I don't think you heard them what work they do.
I don't know off the top of my head. If I had to guess, finance, Chicago especially, has a lot of like asset managers, so people who manage money for rich folks. And that is the kind of job that pays very well.
Right, which will give you a house like that. But yeah, I always look at the John Hughes movies, and even today I still look at these and watch these movies, love them, and get that vibe of the America that I wanted it to be in the 80s and 90s, for example.
Yeah.
This part is brought to you by someone awesome. We'll be back with more questions in a sec.
Hey, I'm McLoughlin, and I host The Life Shift, a podcast about the moments that divide our lives into before and after. Each week, I sit down with someone who's lived through a major turning point, and we talk honestly about how it shaped them. The stories are vulnerable, sometimes messy, but always real. If you love narratives that reveal who we really are underneath the surface, I'd love for you to listen. Just search The Life Shift on your favorite podcast app.
Hey there, Danny here. This podcast will forever be free to listen to. But if you enjoy 5 Random Questions and get value from the show and want to support it, you can do that with a donation of your choosing over at 5randomquestions.com/support. And thanks so much for supporting the show. Now, back to this week's episode. So let's have a look then. We're doing really well here, Amanda. Oh, interesting. A little bit morbid maybe, but I'm not so sure, but let's see how it goes. Question number 4, Amanda. If you could choose your last meal, what would it be?
This is something I think about all the time, and the answer is absolutely American diner food. Depending on how I'm feeling on a given day, the specific meal may change, but most of the time I'm going to go with like a turkey club sandwich. So turkey, lettuce, tomato, mayonnaise, avocado, ideally. I'm lactose intolerant, but if I'm going to kick the bucket, then I'll add some cheddar cheese in there. Why not? On like big, thick, either challah or sourdough toast. And on the side, I want some steak fries with ketchup. I want some coleslaw, diner coleslaw. Amazing. I want a big sweet iced tea on the side, or maybe a Diet Coke, again, depending on the day. And ideally something sweet, maybe a piece of apple pie or a lemon bar.
That is very specific. You mentioned it there.
I've thought about it.
Clearly put thought into that. So what made you think about that originally then?
Um, I really love I love diners. I love diner meals. I am someone who cares a lot about cooking, and when I go out to eat, I like to order stuff that I feel like I can't do on my own, or it's just like there's some ineffable quality that is so much better in a restaurant. And I think French fries are definitely one of those. And something about just the triple decker club sandwich is the food I crave most often. And if I find myself in need of a comfort meal, that is something I'm reaching for. Other contenders include a breakfast combo. I love some amount of eggs, toast, pancakes, bacon, sausage, everything in an American breakfast. But I also am really kind of keen on diner salads, like a Cobb salad or a chef salad, something with, blue cheese, bacon, hard-boiled eggs, lots of veg. Love it.
Is there a diner in New York that makes your ideal club sandwich?
Yes, I would say any diner run by a Greek auntie whose hair is kind of blue tinged and whose nails are about 3 inches long, you're going to be treated really well. But my sister-in-law's family actually runs a diner on Staten Island, the Colonnade, and that is absolutely hands down the best egg cream, the best breakfast, and the best club sandwich I've ever had.
Okay, so that's in Staten Island?
Staten Island.
Okay, I will make sure to leave that in the show notes. So if people are listening to this episode and you're in New York and you're near Staten Island and you've not checked it out, there we go. New place for you to check out.
See, the McLoughlin sent you. Mm-hmm.
We will put that in there for sure. So obviously that's a very, well, I guess it's not a very American, but it could be viewed as very American last meal. If for whatever reason you were out of the country and something happened and you kind of last rites or anything like that, trying to stay away from the morbid point of view, but if you couldn't be near somewhere that could make that food, is there something like a backup that wouldn't maybe be what you would choose first because it is American, ingredients, etc.? Is there maybe a backup that you'd feel, I can maybe do that?
Oh man, I mean, my other favorite thing to get out is pad Thai. I mean, Thai food of any kind. I love Thai salads, papaya salads, Thai curries. But being quite the basic American that I am, a tofu pad Thai extra peanut is absolutely my favorite takeout meal. And so one of my hopes for myself in the next few years is to go to Thailand and really get to experience the breadth of Thai cuisine that I know I have only scratched the surface.
I'm 100% with you there. We have a little Thai restaurant, authentic Thai restaurant, about 20 minutes drive away from us. I'm a massive Thai food fan. And that's a treat because I can't really cook it at home. A, I wouldn't do it justice. And B, just the aromas. I love the aromas, but my family not so much. Same with Indian curry. I love Indian curry, but the aroma, not so much for your home. So yeah, I'm right there with you on the Thai.
I had English Indian food for the first time a couple years ago, and having Rogan Josh from like a Indian place in Manchester where it was clearly family run was also probably among my top 10 meals of all time. So that's another contender.
No, for sure. And being in that area, like the sort of Yorkshire, Lancashire area where you had it, where Manchester is, 100%. I used to live in Bradford, and yeah, when you get a proper, it's weird calling it a British Indian curry, but it is. It's like, it's an Indian curry made in Britain by a proper, authentic, Indian chef. So yeah, I'm going to have some really good food for lunch after this episode has been recorded. Because now you're making me hungry,
I'm thinking
Amanda.
about it like, ooh, I do have a bagel downstairs, which is one of the perks of living in New York.
Yeah. Oh, well, there you go. Nice, good New York bagel. Mm-hmm. So we've almost reached the end then, Amanda. Let's have a look then at what we've got for question number 5. I love this question purely because of your background and your podcast and who you are as a person. So Amanda, question number 5. If you could choose to have any useless superpower, what would you pick?
Excellent. So some of the things that I used to think about when I thought about this question, can you tell I read a lot of like personality quizzes in magazines as a kid? I used to say turning off the lights because I'd be in bed, cozied up, reading, and not able to get out of bed to turn off the overhead light without undoing my whole warm cocoon. Now I have lights that are Bluetooth enabled, and so I can do that, and my life is so much better. I feel like Inspector Gadget every time I do it. I think now what I would want is telekinesis, but very short distance in order to make it fairly useless. So like my phone is about 2 feet away from me. I'd want to be able to move my phone toward me, get it in my hand, or if the TV remote's on the other side of the bed. I think I am giving you the correct impression that I spend a fair amount of time cozy and trying not to get uncozy. So bringing things toward me that are just out of reach would be my useless superpower.
I see. My daughter would disagree that that's a useless superpower. She would love that superpower. She gets very comfortable in her space, and then she does not want to move. So whether she gets hungry, she won't get up to make a sandwich or anything. She'll just stay hungry till someone brings her some food, which is kind of smart. Good thinking on her part.
Work smarter, not harder.
Well, yeah, exactly. But yeah, I mean, that'd be a pretty cool one because you look at, say, Magneto, obviously in the X-Men. That's his main strength. Well, that and read minds, obviously. But that would extremely limit his powers and maybe effectiveness if you have to be within, say, 2 feet to actually do something.
Exactly. I mean, if I really wanted to be ambitious, it would be maybe 10 feet away, but I also don't trust myself to guide things around corners. So if you need to open a fridge, take a beverage out, pour something over ice, I'm not trusting myself with that. But if the TV remote is on the other side of the bed and I don't want to roll over, I can do that.
Well, you could also tie it to your grappling hook. If you had Poison Ivy's grappling hook, that could extend it a little bit. So you could still sit there with your 2 feet.
And you know what? If you watch time-lapse videos of beans vining up a trellis, that shit is smart. They know what they're doing. And so I would trust those tendrils.
Yep. I like it. So there we go. I don't think that's a useless one, sorry. But I completely hear you. It could be useless, obviously, if you need to get something 2 feet, 1 centimetre away from you. That's not going to work. And
Nope.
My daughter, yeah, like I say, if we're ever in New York and with our cheer competition, I'll have to, call you up and say, Amanda, we're in New York. My daughter's here to learn more wisdom for useless superpowers. That is awesome.
Well, always here to give diner recommendations to you and anybody else coming through the great state of New York.
Perfect. I'm here for that. I'm a foodie. I'm here for that. So, Amanda, we have reached the end of your time on the 5 Random Questions hot seat, and I appreciate your time and answers. As is only fair, it is now time to hand over the question baton to yourself.
I would love to know from you, what vegetable do you think your personality most resembles, and why?
That's a good one. I would say maybe, what's it called? Turnip.
Okay.
I would go with turnip. Purely because, I'm Scottish originally. Like I said, I've moved to Canada 20 years ago or so, but I'm Scottish originally. So I have a very close affinity with the Irish. We're both Celts. And the turnip, I don't think the turnip is Irish. That's more potato for being stereotypical. But the reason I was going to say turnip is friends and I, Irish friends and I back in the UK, used to play stupid games with turnips and potatoes and raw vegetables and throw them and try and mush them on heads and stuff like that. So I have an affinity with turnip anyway. But I also feel I've got a reputation with my family, especially, of being a grumpy dad. I'm the one that sort of puts a sensible hat on when my kids want to do something a bit dangerous or a bit further afield than I'm comfortable with, whereas mum will give them a bit more leeway, which is fine, not a problem. But once you sort of get past that exterior, you've got this soft interior. Now, obviously, you have to boil the turnip. You can't just cut through it and have it soft inside. You have to boil it and you have to work on it.
Get to know you a little bit. Yeah.
So it's a bit me, a bit grumpy, but once you get past that and you work on it a little bit and you work on getting by, you get the soft stuff inside. So I feel a turnip would be my vegetable. But that's a good one. I've never been asked that before. And that's a good one, Amanda.
And you're quite right. The turnip was basically the national vegetable of Ireland before the potato was imported from the Americas. And actually, the tradition of carving jack-o'-lanterns, which we now do with pumpkins here in the U.S., began in certain Celtic ceremonies with carving turnips. So you are also historical, noble, and you are cosmopolitan.
Well, I appreciate your research there on the fly to correct, to back me up there. So I appreciate that, Amanda. You've gone up even further in my estimation, so I appreciate that.
I'm also Irish and like mythology, so that was already in the bag. Don't worry about it.
Oh, well, there you go then. Perfect. So, Amanda, for anybody that wants to connect with you, either online, listen to your podcast, your awesome podcast, get to know more about your teaching, or even, if they're in the New York area and maybe want to hang out at some of your favourite diners that you've recommended, etc., where's the best place for people to either connect with you online, check out your shows, etc.?
I am at She's So Mickey on Instagram and Amanda MC on Blue Sky. That is where I am most often. If you want to find out all that Multitude, my podcast collective, produces and makes, including free consulting for folks that are historically excluded from audio or the creative industries, you are totally welcome to join us at multitude.productions. And multitude.productions is our URL.
Very custom, and I'll be sure to leave that, as always, in the show notes. So whatever app you're listening on, or if you're listening to this on the website, check out the show notes as always. I will link through to all these places, as well as all the awesome recommendations from the episode that Amanda shared with us. So Amanda, thanks again for taking part in today's 5 random questions.
My pleasure. Thank you again for having me. And next time you have a turnip, think beautiful, just like me.
I will certainly do that. I might get a funny look or two, but I will certainly do that. Thanks for listening to 5 Random Questions. If you enjoyed this week's episode, I'd love for you to leave a review on the app you're currently listening on, or over at 5randomquestions.com/review. And if you know someone else that would enjoy the show, be sure to send them this way. It's very much appreciated. Until the next time, keep asking those questions.